back to the Denver Links podcast. My name is Christian Furbeck. I'll be your host for today. I'm usually like behind the scenes, kind of just like run everything for the podcast, but today, just by happenstance, I'll be hosting. And what an episode to host. We've got a super cool guest here. My professor, I'm sure a lot of you have had him. We have Andy Rok Guerrero of the Flobots of CU Denver. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Christian.
Doing great. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm stoked about what you guys are doing on the campus and doing the radio. And like, I know you all have been working hard on it for like the last year and figuring out rights and all these other things.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you're just doing it and you're trying, and like that's what you should be doing in college and in the music business.
Exactly.
Is just like go forward.
I mean, that's been our philosophy from the start. I mean, we really did make this club so we could give opportunities to music business students so they could get stuff on their resume before they're applying to all these huge, scary jobs. You know what I mean?
That's
and
awesome.
It feels really good for it to just like be paying off at this point. You know what I mean?
You guys are doing great, and then you'll get to learn as the year goes on, like, oh, this was cool, or this didn't work, or people really like this, and
exactly.
You know.
There's been a lot of that, and we're just really happy that we're like on track now. Yeah. Speaking of, the radio just launched, so go listen to that. You can find it on all our Instagrams, the links for everything. So let's get into this.
Right.
So for those who like may not know you or like know your story,
Sure.
Could you like just give us some of your background,
Yeah,
some of your
I'll do a
experience in the music industry?
brief history
Cool.
of Andy Guerrero. So I am from Denver, Colorado. I technically, I guess I moved here when I was like 1 or 2 years old. My dad married my mom. He's immigrated from Puebla, Mexico, and so we moved here, I think, when I was about 2-ish, maybe 2 or 3. And I basically grew up in North Denver, which back then was, now I guess is referred to as the Highlands gentrification. But when I grew up there, it was kind of a little bit more like the hood, or, a little bit rougher area. But got into music. I think I started playing. So my dad was a pastor.
Okay.
Was a Mexican pastor. So I had to go to church every Sunday, and thus had to sing lots of church songs and Mexican church songs and all that. So I think that's kind of how I got some of my skill in just learning how to sing and being around music. And I believe like second grade or so, I picked up a trumpet. Like actually, which was really cool about that time is like, in elementary school, they were kind of like, here's a trumpet or here's a saxophone, and like, learn how to play it. And
most I got in elementary school was like a xylophone or something.
Yeah, they're like, here you go, hey, play an instrument. So I started with trumpet, and then I started taking some piano lessons. And then when I got to middle school, I think middle school is kind of like my most impactful time in terms of like teachers that I had that really like kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Like in middle school, I'm sure middle school is different for everyone. I mean, sure, there's probably some popular kids that it wasn't that bad for. For me, it was not great. And like for most people, I'm sure they can relate to that. But I try to make friends. Wasn't really popular or anything like that. But I did really love music, and I had a band teacher, Mr. Miller, and a choir teacher named Miss Clayton. And they really encouraged me. Like Miss Clayton was like, "Hey, you should join the choir." And then I was playing trumpet and band. And so for those 3 years, I really got into music, and I was really encouraged by my choir teacher. Like, "Hey, you can sing, you can do these things. You're actually a pretty good entertainer or whatever." And like, I think I won like the music like award or whatever for in 8th grade or whatever for music at the school.
That's an ego boost for someone
Yeah,
who's not
I was like,
popular,
but really I decided that's really when I was like, I really love music. And I was like, hey, maybe this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. So got into high school, and around that time, like I think 13, 14, like as I'm transitioning, I'm like listening to a lot of, back then, I guess it's like kind of an interesting time in the 90s. So I graduated in 99. So, like I feel the 90s are, and it may be reflective of the music and stuff that I write or I listen to, is like, it's just such a wide genre. Is this time where it was like, there was punk rock and hip hop and ska and like, I don't know, like the Squirrel Nut Zippers were like on the radio. You're like, how is that possible? And, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and,
like legendary decade.
Yeah. So, and hip hop's like coming into its own right, because like the '80s, it's just coming up, and then it's still not really validated as a true art form or something that's a fad. And then you have this golden era of hip hop. And
I think it started at like 1994 when Nas dropped Illmatic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
like
a little earlier because I like Tribe for me is like I would say Tribe Called Quest is probably my biggest like that was a really got me into hip hop was Tribe. And so also side note, so it's like I'm coming up in this religious background, which I'm sure people maybe have can relate to, where it was very like you're only supposed to you can't listen to secular music and this kind of stuff. So it felt very rebellious. I was like, I'm gonna listen to Weezer and punk rock and Offspring and like you can't tell me what to do. And it was something I felt ownership to and I felt really connected to. So of course I wanted to play guitar, and I think from that moment on I was very much like I want to be in a band. I want to like rock out. I want to be a rock star or whatever. Like I definitely was like that was what I wanted to do.
So right out of high school is when you kind of started taking music like really seriously?
I mean, I basically joined a band when I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And a lot of that it's kind of interesting because Denver now has a pretty vibrant live scene. But back when I was coming up, there weren't a ton of local bands. There was maybe, 5 or 6 local bands. And there wasn't a lot of all ages venues. And the venues everybody smoked in, because smoking wasn't illegal in venues and stuff, and there was a lot of bars where if you wanted to go see music, you kind of had to go to bars. There wasn't a lot of all ages stuff, and so, I started kind of playing guitar at the end of middle school. Starting kind of maybe writing songs, and kept that in high school, and then. I guess I really, the whole thing with music and community and you probably know this, like just you find your friends or you go to a concert for the first time and then all of a sudden your friends are like, well, we got to go to this concert. Now we got to go to this one. And I had these 2 girls, Jen and Zariah.
Shout out Jen and
Zariah. And they were like these punk rock, like all their hair was dyed. They had like, piercings, and they were just like the cool, like rock girls who went to concerts all the time. So this is also like, so that what they're relating to is like Sublime and like 311 and like, so I did get to see Sublime. Like I saw Bradley like right before he died. Like I got to go to that show.
Way.
Yeah. And
that's really sick.
But what's really interesting is, so I can't drive really. Right. And then it's, rock and so I kind of befriended these girls, but they kind of took me under their wing. They were like, hey, you want to go to this like, I don't know, maybe they just thought I was like this cute little freshman kid or something, and they're like all right, kid, like we'll show you the ropes. And then they would like pick me up. And also like it was kind of interesting because in my neighborhood, like it was considered like not a good neighborhood because I was bussed. I went to George Washington High School, so I was in the north side. I should have maybe gone to North High School, but I didn't want to go there because my mom taught there, and I was like, I don't want to go to school there. And they did busing back then, so like the Mexican kid could get bused to like kind of the richer school in George Washington. So I got bused there, and they, there are only a few people who would come to my neighborhood and pick me up, because they were like worried they were going to get shot or something. Yeah. And maybe semi-valid. But they would start, and so that was my first experience. So they would go to shows, but they had this place. It was called Cafe Euphrates. It was over on like 17th and maybe Franklin-ish. Okay. And like by the hospital over there. And so it was this restaurant. They had gyros and like chocolate milkshakes, and people were smoking and stuff like that. But bands would play there. So like these were like younger high school bands. And you would go there. They would go there every Friday night or something. Like, okay, you're going to Cafe Euphrates. We're all going. We would go and we just hang out, and they're talking and we're eating. And then you'd watch a local band. And so one night this local band was playing, and I thought they were cool or whatever. And I was like, I play guitar or whatever. And I sing. And this drummer of this band knew that their singer was like going to college or whatever. And he was like, hey, I was like, why don't you come jam with us or whatever? And I was like, writing songs, but I wasn't like a great guitar player. And then got together. I like, my mom's like driving me to these like, kids' houses so I can like.
What did your religious parents think of all this?
I mean, like, at that point, I'd rebelled enough where I was just like, I'm not going to church. I'm not doing any of this. Yeah, like, fair. And I think they kind of, and I'm a teenager, so like, I think they kind of were just like, okay, fine, like, you know, do what you want to do kind of thing.
I mean, some people just know the trajectory of their lives.
Yeah, like they
young,
were,
yeah.
they, you know, I think they kind of understood it. And like, honestly, I was a pretty, like, I was a pretty good kid. Like, I didn't do any drugs or drink or anything. Like, I was very straight edge. Like, I did not do any drugs or alcohol until I was like 24 or something.
That's crazy,
like,
coming from a professional musician.
Yeah. So, and that was part of like the crew that I hung out with. Like, some people did, you know, would drink and stuff like that. But like, we were this crew that like, we just didn't do that because we would dance all night and we would go to parties and we get like people hyping. That just like was part of our thing. So, so anyways, I guess part of this whole rambling thing is that community, like early on I learned like music was about community. It's like, and I also didn't have like, once I kind of went to high school, I got to kind of start over, and then I got to start making friends, and I kind of like, oh, this group was accepting me, and like music was a thing that brought us all together, and we liked these bands, and it was like we were all together, and it was, as long as you like this band and we were there, we're having a good time together. And that was when I first kind of understood what it was about. And I started this band called The Function with a K, like when I was 15.
Okay.
You know, and we just started writing songs and like playing out and playing shows. And then I kind of learned early on about promotion because, again, you, like, another thing that I thought was really cool about music is that, like, because I had been part of that group that had been made fun of or like, you know, like wasn't cool or whatever, is that like, I learned earlier, I was like, okay, well, if you want to play a show, you have to sell tickets and you have to bring people, right? And it's like, okay, our kids my age can't drink, but they can buy tickets. And so I learned early on, I was like, it would invite everybody to the show. And it was like, and that really is like, it was kind of cool because it was like the cheerleaders would come and the drama kids would come. And the musicians would come and the jocks would come, you know? And it was like, because I invited everybody. It was like, yo, everybody can come to the show. Hey, are you coming to the show? Are you coming to the show? And then it was kind of this thing because we're in high school, but we're like playing, like now we start bringing tickets and we're playing at the Ogden or the Bluebird and like kind of bigger.
Ogden in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
All
well, because we could bring like 300 or 400 people.
I mean, shit.
You know, like I literally go around like, all right, like, battle the bands, like you got to show up or whatever.
My entire high school is pulling up.
Yeah, because you know, and because there was like, and it was interesting because like I went to school and then some of the other guys went to different schools, so we all kind of went to different high schools, but we were in this band together.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it was kind of like, and you know, a funny story. I think we did a battle of the bands. I don't know if it was that or if it was Schism, but the guitar player in One Republic. The like lead guitar player, and whenever I run into him, like we did some benefit with Brian Tedder, and I was like, well, he was like, yeah, man, I remember you. We were in a battle of the bands against you, and you beat us.
No shit.
Yeah.
No shit.
And he was like, yeah, I was like, I've never gotten over that. So,
oh, that's a flex right there.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So you know, so that was really early on. Like I had this. There was this woman who managed this band called Chaos Theory. They were kind of like a metal rap band, which was kind of a thing.
I think you've talked about them in class.
Yeah, they were like the main dude was like just had like mad tattoos, like bald, you know, like tattoos everywhere or whatever.
Metal rap,
but he was like super, like he was really nice to me. You know, he was just like, all right, kid, like
Usually
you know,
those
come
people
up
are
here,
pretty
like
nice,
yeah, let's how you do it. And she's the one who was kind of like, you got to make a flyer, and then you got to tell people to come, and then you got to sell these tickets, and so that's really where I kind of learned about promotion, and that like, you know, and the thing is like, and our band wasn't even like very good, like we weren't that good, you know, like, but we like wrote an album and like re-recorded it at a friend's house, and we like made a CD and we like sold it, you know, and like at that point I'm thinking, you know, I'm like, all right, yeah, we're gonna be in a band, you know, like, and then of course like people go off to college and do things. I'm like, wait, we're not gonna be a band forever. We're not gonna be the biggest band ever and try to get a record deal. And we're in Denver, not in LA or whatever. So, so I still wanted to do music, and you know, and I struggled a little bit towards the end of high school, like just graduating and you know, because it was like hard for me. And then I found
at that point, did you know like music is what you wanted?
I knew I definitely wanted to do. I knew I was going to be in a, like, because I had I'd been in this high school band for 2 or 3 years, and we had like some pretty cool success. Like us, you know, it's like, hey, we got to play to like 1,000 people, or we got to open up for these bands. Like there was these local bands that we really loved. We got to open up for them, and we put out a record, and we were like,
it's pretty damn good for high school.
Yeah, you know, and so, but then it's like they left, so it was like, okay, now I got to start another band and figure that out, and then I found out about CU. So I'm like, am I even going to go to college or whatever? And then found out CU has this music program because I'm like, okay, I don't even know if I can. Can I even get into like Berkeley or something like that, and can I even afford to go there? Because like my parents definitely didn't have like money to pay for it. You know what I mean? But I will say back then it was much cheaper. Like I did get out of this school with no debt, like none.
Yeah.
So. But probably what it costs for a class for you was like the entire semester.
Oh,
for
probably,
me.
yeah.
You
Especially
know?
with the tuition increase.
Yeah. So I actually that was kind of cool. I got a benefit from that. But I found out
being so close to like home too. That's,
and it's like, and I was like, oh, like there's music business classes here. I can learn about the music business. I can, learn how to record. I got like some vocal scholarships, and I started as a vocal scholarship, and then I switched to guitar, and then and oddly enough, it's like I had Paul Musso and Drew Morell as my guitar teachers.
Way.
Yeah, it's like I'm sure they're not thrilled about that, but at least I did go on and do things or whatever, and but they were like. Also, they were the greatest guitar teachers. Like, I didn't really understand theory. They taught me theory, chords. There's no way I could have been in a band or been a band leader if I didn't learn those things in college.
Of course, yeah.
So I think that's one of those interesting things where it's like you're in college, you're trying to get better, you're trying to learn, and you're using that time because then when things start happening, you don't really have a lot of time to like study or like, I mean, you could improve your craft and practice and stuff like that, but things kind of start going.
Yeah.
And so... Yeah, and Paul, I loved Paul because he just made guitar theory so understandable.
Such a good musician too.
I've seen him play amazing. Like they're all the like every other faculty member here is like my musicianship, and they're like way up here. It's just like only is like I was in a rap hip hop band, so it's like that's why I'm like a little bit higher up or whatever. But
give yourself some.
But they're like amazing musicians here, and. So started kind of figuring that out. I'm like, and then I started another funk band that was called Bop Schism. That was like this horn band, and just also got used to like cycling through band members and be like, oh yeah, sometimes you gotta like, that's just part of the game. Sometimes people are with you and they're not, and then hopefully you stumble across a group. And that's where the theory and stuff like really made it helpful for me to like communicate with horn players and be like, at least know what the chord structures were and things like that. And that really helped in songwriting and stuff.
That's true. Like music theory, I guess, is like very universal through like all instruments.
Or just being able to be like, hey, here's a song, here are the chords.
Yeah,
here's like, hey, can you play this? Luckily, I became friends. So I went to school here. I was doing that, kind of put an initial band together, just kind of bringing in whoever I could. And then I met this guy, Serafin Sanchez, who... It's funny. So I had this drummer, and we like went to an Avs game or something, or Nuggets game, and we were like in line at the Cinnabon place or whatever, and this woman is like, she's like, oh, I like your cologne. That smells really good or whatever. And I'm like, oh wow, well thank you. And she's like, well, what do you boys do? And I'm like, oh well, I go to school. I'm in a band. I play guitar or whatever. And she's like, well, my son Serafin plays the saxophone, and he is very good. He's like, so if you ever need a saxophone player, and I was like, well, actually, we kind of do need a saxophone player. I just fired this other guy. I was like, what does he play? He's like, oh yeah, I knew he could play like Dave Matthews stuff and things like that. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And like got his number and like randomly called it. And like, I've never met this guy before, but I'm just like, hey man, I met your mom at the Cinnabon. And
hey man, I met your mom.
Yeah, I met your mom. But she says like, you're pretty cool, and we're really looking for a sax player. Like, you want to jam or whatever? And then and then like we were in a band for like 10 years together. And he's like definitely one of the best musicians I've ever played with. He's an amazing saxophone player, plays piano. I mean, now he works for Ableton. He's like the artist rep for Ableton or whatever. But he's also like, he went on tour with like the Glenn Miller Orchestra. He's like Big Gigantic, when they do their Red Rock shows, like he's the guy like they call to play like Barry or whatever. And he's like the guy who gets the calls for. He's like an amazing musician and a great guy. So that helped me with horns and stuff like that, and then recorded an EP. Kind of started figuring out songwriting a little bit more. Was getting a little bit of love from the press, and then just kind of grinding. And then the Flobots happened because and this is kind of out of this friend group, this kind of weird friend group that we had, that we were all kind of really amazing people in it, but.
And were you still in college at this point?
I was in college when I was like getting to the end of college when I started Flobots. It's probably like 2003, 2004.
All right.
You know, and I took like gap years, I guess, whatever. Like I did take a year off I think I took a year or two off from school, and I was probably like a lot of you, like, oh, should I finish college? Like, you know, oh, I want to go be in this band. Should I do this? And, you know, my mom was like, she was like, please just finish, please just finish. And, but while I was here, so I met Isaac from the Fray. So we became really, really good friends. Because we didn't have dorms back then. Like, you guys have dorms. It's like a little easier to hang out and everything. And we didn't have that. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to hang out with each other, we really had to like try to hang out with each other. And so Isaac and I just became really good friends. And then we would just write songs together. And he would like come over and he'd be like playing me songs. And and then I'd be like, this guy's like pretty good. You know, like is it just me, or like I'm getting goosebumps when this guy like sings and plays guitar? Like, he's pretty good, right? Like, this guy's pretty good. It's like one of those things where you kind of know like a guy's like really special.
Oh,
but,
just like instantly. Yeah.
You know, but you're like, we're in Denver. Like, it's not like, you know, destined to be there. But we both went to this program, and so I was like getting internships, and I got him got an internship at the Gothic, and I got him an internship at the Gothic, and I booked like the Fray's first shows because nobody really knew how to book shows, and I knew how to do that because I was doing that kind of with my high school band. Yeah. And I was starting to do that. So I was like booking all the Fray's like first shows and stuff. And so we were pretty tight. And then we would book shows together. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter that we were like a funk band and they were like the sad piano band. It was like we were just support each other because we had to play, you know, there wasn't a lot of bands to play shows together. Yeah. And so you know, he was doing well, and I like, and during this time in college, so my hustle, or how I was paying my bills, my rent, is, and this is another thing, I think it's like, why do you go to college? It's like, obviously I think we have good professors here and stuff, but I think it's for the life experience, and like even just doing this Links Radio thing, right? Like, how many friends have you made doing this?
All of them.
You know, and you guys all have something in common. Yeah. You can joke, and you're like, oh, this didn't go good, but you're going to remember that, and you're going to have these relationships, and that's to me kind of what it's about, because some of the relationships I made here, I still have relationships
especially for
with.
the music business.
That's very, very relevant in the music business. And so I took a year off. So my hustle was, and this is, I would never have gotten this job if I didn't go to school. Mm. So whenever I go to class, I would literally hand out flyers to every single person. I'd be like, hey guys, what's up? Bob Schism's playing a show. We're opening for Fishbone. Like, you know, hit me up for some tickets. And I would like literally give everyone a flyer, like very annoyingly so, but I didn't care because I was just like, I got to try to get people to come to the show. Mm. And I did that one day, and this girl, Heather, like worked at Nobody in Particular. So Nobody in Particular Presents owned the Ogden and the Bluebird before AEG.
So they're like a smaller promotion.
They were an independent promotion company, and they actually sued Live Nation. And
really?
Like won, for like monopolistic practices and stuff.
I mean, valid.
Yeah, but they were kind of one of the first kind of Denver promotion companies, and back then, you know, obviously we rely on social media and things like that for promotion, but back then the only way to get the word out about shows was looking in the Westward and people putting up posters and handing out flyers at shows. So I got to meet with this guy, and he was like, hey, you know, I need somebody to put up posters around campus and like around town. You know, I'll pay you like $100 per show to do this. You know, I'll get you into any show you want that we're hosting, and I'll hook your band up with opening slots or whatever. And I was like, sign me up. I was like, this is good. And I was getting paid, you know. I could, so, because shows are still expensive at that point, or not that expensive, but you know, you're paying rent and everything. And so I was like, this is great. So I got to see tons of shows. So I also got to see a lot of bands, like national touring bands, see what the flow was like, see a lot of really, and like was inspired to me, like, oh, I got to be this good, or this is what a good show is like, and we got to be on our game. And so it was like I got all this experience, and I basically turned that into a side hustle where they were paying me, but then I got other like festivals and other people. I was like, oh yeah, I've got this poster business. If you want me to, you know, pay me a couple $100, and when I'm putting up these other posters, I'll put up yours. So I was making you know, I was making like, I don't know, like $2 or $3 grand a month, like doing that while I was going to school. And this is like in what, 2001 or I don't know, like 2003 or something. It was like 20 years ago or whatever. So, which taught me about making a business. And then I could also, big benefit, I'm promoting my own band, right? So when you're meeting people at these shops, at like the head shops and at the restaurants, and then you become friends with these people. You're like, oh, can I put up the poster? And they're like, oh yeah, because I would hook them up with tickets to shows. The promoters would be like, yo, if they want a ticket to the show, like we'll try to get them in.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, whenever I came in, it's like, oh, do you want to get into that show? And I get them in. Then like they would give me priority on all the poster slots because they're like, well, Andy hooks us up with shows.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, by the way, my band's playing. Or like, here's my CD of my band. And so then that's how I really started kind of meeting everybody around town. And people started to kind of know, oh, he does this and he's in Flobots and everything. And so 2004, 2005, Johnny Five and Brer, who are the main rappers, Johnny Five is Jamie Laurie. He's like the guy who raps on Handlebars, and Stefan's the other MC, and he goes by Brer Rabbit as his MC name. But I knew those guys since high school.
Mm-hmm.
So Brer, Stefan, his little sister Simone was like, I met her in high school at GW, and she just kind of like invited me into this crew of friends, and we would just like party and like have a good time together. And that's go to concerts, we go see the Fugees, or like go to these hip hop shows together, or then go like to a rave or whatever, and like we'd be out all night dancing and partying, but we didn't really like do drugs or anything. It was just like that was kind of the culture.
That is something I love about Denver, like the diversity of what music we have.
You can
here.
go to like anything.
Oh yeah.
And so she became my best friend, and so that's how so then Jamie, like those guys were putting out cassette tapes as like Flobots or whatever, like in like the 90s or whatever, and I would listen to them.
Really?
It was different. It wasn't like what the band is, but they were just kind of doing that as for fun in high school. And then Jamie like went to college and he like made a solo record. Now during this time, it's like white guy rappers, like Eminem is like just kind of coming out, it's like that's the first like legit like white guy rapper.
So the way is not paved.
So it's like at that time there, like Stefan's black, Jamie's white, so there was like this kind of crew thing or whatever, but there weren't a lot of white dude rappers who could act like it's like Vanilla Ice was the stereotype or whatever.
There's a big difference between rappers that are white and white rappers.
Exactly. So he made the solo record that actually was pretty cool, and then he moved back to town, and then they were kind of starting to do shows, but they were using like CD players and stuff, and I was just like, they were my friends, so I'd always go, but I felt Jamie was one of the best rappers I had heard like ever. Like I felt like he could compete with a lot of people in rap. He was a very good rapper. Like he just was good at writing raps, and
that's hard.
Yeah, and I was like, he's kind of like weirdly brilliant like that. And so I was like, look, guys, I was like, I think if we put a band behind you and you guys rap, I think people will be into that more than instead of you having like a CD and rapping to a track, and they're like, oh yeah. Now at that point I had my own band, but I kind of knew what it was to like put a band together and play shows and book shows. So I think the first technically Flobot show was we played an anti-war show against the Iraq War in like 2004, and I learned some of their songs, but I had basically my band Schism back them up, and the viola player, like she didn't even have a pickup on her viola. We had to put like a 57 on her mic to do it, and we played these few songs, and that was kind of like the first Flobot show. Yeah. After that, we basically just started having rehearsals, and I kind of like it started kind of with Bob Schism kind of backing them up, and then the trumpet player from Bob Schism ended up becoming the trumpet player for Flobots, and I got and then basically we got a drummer and a different bass, and actually I got the guy who played in my high school band to play bass in Flobots. So he's the original bass player. So
he was replaced at one point, right?
Well, he eventually left, but like really during that time when Flobots was the biggest, he was like, I basically brought him in.
He was there.
I brought him in because I was like, we need a bass player. And I remember, and he was like going to school in Boulder. He was going to CU Boulder. So he was around. Other people had gone to, like, my drummer went to Columbia. Like, he's super smart. He's like, he's like worked for like the New York Times. So, like, all these people are very smart. So he was the only one that was kind of in town. And then I was like, we were in a band together in high school. We're like, you form a bond. And I was like, trying to think who I could get in that would be cool, that would have good energy. and like want to do it. And so I invited him to be part of the band. And so he became the bass player in the band. And then the drummer, this guy, Kenny Ortiz, we had kind of had trouble kind of keeping a drummer. And then this guy, Kenny Ortiz, was kind of like an old school drummer. He was maybe like 10 years older than us, but he had played in a lot of these like Lord of Word and the Disciples of Bass, and he's like metal. He was a very good drummer. And I knew, like could do the job and would show up and was like into it. So after that, kind of like, okay, now we have a band. I'm basically doing both bands. Like I'm doing my funk band, I'm doing my Flobots thing. We're playing a lot of shows together, like booking shows, but we're starting to sell out these shows together. And then it's like, oh, we do Flobot shows, and then we have a horn section, and then, it'd be like just trying to make each show like an event.
Okay, yeah.
And and then so basically over the next 2 or 3 years, I think what's interesting about Flobots, one of our strategies, or maybe not strategies, was just that like Jamie and Stefan are very much activists and very much believe in like if you know any of our music, kind of a political social justice, like that's kind of what the band is about.
I mean,
is
you can
activism.
hear it from Handlebars.
Yeah. It's like that's because Jamie and Stefan very much are those people.
Yeah,
they're very true to their lyrics, and like when I was meeting Jamie, like he was doing campaigns to get people to vote and stuff, and like we were getting people registered to vote, and like he was very very into that, and honestly, like that's who he is. So so because of that, we would know all these nonprofits and all these other things, and they would be like, hey, can you come play like our nonprofit party, or come play this fundraiser for this thing, and so we just kind of started playing all these different like nonprofit things, and then we started playing at some high schools and like doing showcases for these students, and playing at festivals, so we were kind of building up this like young base, this like people our age, like in their 20s, and then like sometimes older, and just kind of started doing that around town. Got a local booking agent. We recorded our first EP, which had a first version of Handlebars on it. And
oh, really? Is that on Spotify?
It is, yeah. We did actually get it out through the label, that was when the first time I realized, like, and that wasn't even like that Handlebars version is okay, but it wasn't recorded the best because we recorded that whole album in like 2 days at a studio.
Oh, okay.
Where like that's when I learned about studios, where you're like you can't just book like 2 days at a studio because you have to mix the songs. Yeah. So we're like in there, we're playing live, we're like overdubbing all this stuff, and then it's like we don't have any money left. It's like, okay, just mix it, I guess.
Flip some knobs.
Yeah, that's why it's like those first recordings aren't like the best, but yeah. But now we're selling CDs at shows, and then now what I'm starting to see is like people are coming to the shows and they know all the lyrics to all the songs, and they especially know the lyrics to Handlebars. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay, now we need to make a full-length album. And then basically over the course of a year, we made Fight with Tools, which was our major label debut album, but we did it on our own. The label ended up buying it from us. And so we're saving up money. Basically, every gig we have, we just put into the band fund. We didn't pay ourselves. Yeah. We just put everything into the band fund to help pay for recording, because recording is still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And I was very much like, hey, I think we should re-record Handlebars. Like, oh, I know, but we already put that song out. I was like, yeah, but I think we should like re-record it. And I think we should like re-record it really, really well, because this is like our best song.
Yeah.
And
So was like being like very reactive to your audience and your fan base like a big part of your like getting off the ground?
Yeah, I think so. And just also that whole community thing, it's like we were making friends with all these. Mm-hmm. It was our friends and our family supporting us at first, and then we got to this point where it's like, oh, now like it's not just our friends showing, like, because you can only ask your friends to come to so many shows,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're gonna come see us play again, and you've seen us play like 20 times or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we started getting kind of like real fans who like were all like, I don't like, oh, that person's come to every show. Yeah. But they're like, I don't know them. They're not like a friend of a friend of a friend, which normally it is. It's like, that's some kid who like heard our songs and is like coming to the show. Mm-hmm. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's got to feel like insane.
Yeah, it's like, that's what you're kind of like, oh, I guess songwriting is like pretty important. You want people to come to your shows. And, so we basically slowly built up that following to where, like we had finished the album, we were going to put it out ourselves, And our goal was basically to sell out the Gothic Theater, which is about 1,100 cap room.
Yeah.
But we didn't have radio play or anything in it. That was just like building it up all locally.
Wow, that's a really great bar to hit for like a grassroots
and we early on kind of we did these little retreats where we would like go up to this like cabin and we would like write down our goals. And actually the year that we had like we got the record deal and we did all the stuff was like I remember it was kind of crazy because we were like, all right, what are our goals? Like we want to play Red Rocks. We want to sell 1 million records. We want to get a record deal. We want to do these things. And like literally everything that we wanted, like pretty much happened that year.
That shit,
yeah. And so we, we essentially we're doing that, building that fan base. And then Isaac from the Fray. So, now during this time, so Fray have kind of blown up in 2005, 2004, right? Yeah. So now all of a sudden one of my best friends is like, like huge, like their songs are on Grey's Anatomy, and he's like they're playing to like it's like we would play the Gothic Theater together. Maybe we'd sell like 400 tickets, and it's like their song on the radio, and then I show up, it's like sold out. I'm like, oh wait, what's going on here? And dealing with a little bit of jealousy. It's like, oh man, like my friend's like doing the thing, like he got the record deal.
Yeah.
He's like doing the things. Like how come I'm not getting the things? But that allowed me to do Flobots, and then I would like send him like what we were working on, and so they would like play like some Flobot stuff like in their house music when they were on tour and playing these like bigger arenas and stuff. Yeah. And they liked the song too, so they were doing like 3 sold out nights at Red Rocks, and they like decided to have local bands play. And so he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, you want to open for us at Red Rocks?" And I was like, "Yes, heck yes, I do." Because I hadn't gotten to do that yet. That was like a dream, right? Like play Red Rocks.
Especially from here. Like,
and it's a sold out show, and it's like...
That's got to be like super special moment.
Yeah, and so and it was my friend hooking me, I met at college. She was like, it didn't work out for my other band to be able to hook us up, but like this worked out and he was able to hook us up. So we had actually just finished the album. So we like pressed the album, had it... So basically, we were releasing it at the show at the Gothic like a few weeks later, but then we got this thing to play Red Rocks.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, let's just get the CDs, like, and then whoever's at the Red Rock show, we'll just sell it, because that's a good opportunity to sell it. And we were supposed to be direct support, and then they put this other band in front of us, and I was like a little bit annoyed about that. But it was still like, because I was like, oh, is anybody going to be there when the doors open and everything? But it was still pretty full. And we went out there and we just like crushed it, right? And then like the band after us was like not like, it was like a noise rock band and people were like not feeling that. So everybody left and we were like, hey, come meet us at the merch booth. And then we just had a line and we sold like 500 CDs that night.
My God.
And we're also like, hey, come to our CD release show, which is in like 3 weeks at the Gothic. So we sold like 500 CDs, and so now these people are now listening to the record before like the official release party.
Yeah.
And they're probably like, oh, I maybe like this record. This is actually a pretty good record. And then we booked that and we actually sold it out on our own. It was like a big thing. We're like, oh man, we did it. We sold all these tickets on our own. No radio, no anything.
Just like some grassroots.
Just grassroots, building fans.
Right there,
You'll as in class, I'm always like, one fan at a time.
Exactly.
One fan at a time. One fan at a time, and your job is to make music, but you're trying to build fans and a community, and so then we enter the radio contest. So then it's like, okay, I found out this hometown thing because that was something that the Freight entered, I think, a couple of years ago, and that's how they got on the radio. So we noticed.
Is that how they got their
I
big bump?
I think so. I don't know if they got added or if they won the contest. I can't remember, but it was crazy because we're like, it was the first time like. Props to KTCL and Nerf for like basically burgeoning the whole Colorado music scene in terms of us getting national exposure.
Yeah.
Because radio was pretty powerful back then. And
would you say that radio was like the main way to break back then?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you were on the radio, it was just like
that was it.
Yeah, because there wasn't like there was no streaming. There was iTunes, but like, and there's also it's like MySpace. So like. MySpace was a thing too, so people were listening to Handlebars on MySpace or whatever because we built a MySpace page.
Interesting, okay.
But there's no Facebook, there's not Twitter, there's not, like all these things that Spotify, there's nothing.
So were you guys getting more like local radio play, or like when did you start getting like more national?
So this contest, so 93.3 is like the local alternative station.
Okay.
And they were like kind of the number one listened to station. And Nerf did this thing called Hometown for the Holidays, and bands would submit, they would judge, they'd have this experts or like other DJs, they would rate stuff, and then they would pick 10 songs. And then they would play those songs for a week in regular rotation. So you'd hear Green Day, and then you'd hear Flobots,
Okay.
and then you'd hear another local, and they would say who the local band was. So it's like, and for a week, so you're like on the radio for a week, but a lot of people are listening to it. And when they did Handlebars, but the difference with that song is like when they played it, people would call into the radio station and be like, "Yo, what's that bicycle song? Or what's that? Who does that song? That Handlebars song, or whatever." And so right away, it was a reactive song that people would call. That's what radio wants. They want songs that people will call in, kind of like if something is going viral or whatever. Back then it was like, oh, it's a reactive single, meaning people will be like, I want to hear it on the radio. Mm-hmm. So they were getting that just when we were playing it locally. And then then there's a contest, we got the top 3, and then you play the thing and the people vote on it, and then you do a live show, and we won everything because we crushed the live show, and we did we won all the prizes.
Okay.
And then basically around January or February, the DJ just added us to regular rotation, as any other artist. Okay. So now we're getting rotation. Now we're selling getting a ton of iTunes downloads, and people are going to the local record stores, and we're selling a couple hundred CDs a week. And so we're charting on Billboard, locally. So now we're starting to get attention from major labels. Yeah. And then before that, I had my friend JJ Italiano, who's now at Spot. He's a big wig. He's in charge of Today's Top Hits at Spotify, and an alumni. What?
Go see you, Denver.
We got a lot of secret alumni who are doing pretty big things and pretty powerful in the music business.
It's every other week you hear something crazy. What was it? Mark Rubidow, was it, that just won a Grammy?
Oh yeah. One of our dean or vice or chancellor
of the Chem.
Yeah. And so I don't know. But JJ's probably one of the most powerful people in the music business.
Oh yeah,
and went to school here
for sure. Yeah.
And we met. We became friends. He moved to LA. He started working, and then I was like, okay, we're starting to get all this stuff, and managers were starting to come to us, and I was like, I don't trust anybody else. I was like, will you be our manager? Because at least he had moved to LA, and he was working at an agency, and he got us our first agent, and got us a lawyer, and he was 24. He didn't, but I trusted him, and he was my friend, and that would have never happened without the school, right?
Yeah.
So he's finally managing us. Now all these labels are starting to call JJ, because I'm like, well, our manager's JJ now, so you got to talk to JJ about this. And Warner and Sony and Universal and all these things are starting to reach out to us. And we're like, oh crap, are we is this maybe kind of happening? Are we maybe going to actually get a record deal? We're like, oh man.
I mean, I'd say it's happening. The big 3 are reaching out.
And because at this point we've probably been a band for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And all wanting to do it, but it's a pretty lofty goal. And then I remember, so now we're on the radio. That radio thing happened in December. That's December of 2007. So 2008, January, we're added to rotation, and we book a show. So we played that Gothic show, I think, in September of 2007, where we sold it out ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, okay, let's book the show at the Gothic for February. Well, maybe we can do it again. But now we were on the radio, and now all these people had bought our album. And so when we put tickets on sale, it sold out in 30 minutes or something. We're like, what? Yeah. Because I would call the promoter. I'm like, all right, yeah. So how long do you think it'll be till the promoter's like, you're sold out. It's sold out already. And we're we played this show in Fort Collins. It was oh, it's sold out already. I was like, what? I was like, it took us forever just to sell 100 tickets up there. It's sold out. What? So now it's we're starting to see oh wow, if you have a song and you're getting radio and you make an okay album and you actually can start getting real fans. And so so February we do that show. Universal Republic reaches out to us. So Republic now is the biggest label. They have Taylor Swift and Drake and Ariana Grande, and they are the biggest label in the world. And Monty and Avery Lippman, who ran that label, or still run the label, they ran that label at the time that we were signed to that label. So Monty Lippman, so we had that show. He flew out to see us play at the Gothic with sold out show, headlining show. I was the only one, and JJ were the only ones that knew that he was coming. I didn't tell the band because I didn't want anybody to be nervous, oh, the label guy's here, even though I was really nervous. I was oh man, this is our only chance or whatever. we play the show. I think it goes pretty well. And I walk off stage, and then literally Monty Littman, like, because JJ's like, hanging with Monty and doing the manager thing. And then I come up, and he, like, right after he get off stage, and he's like, hey, what's up? He's like, I'm Monty Littman with Republic Records, and I just want to be the first to offer you a record deal. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so JJ and I had talked about this before, and he's like, don't be like too excited about any of that stuff. It was like, just play it really cool. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, that's cool, man. Well, we're going to go next door and go bowling and like play some pinball. If you want to come hang out, you can, if you want. And at that point,
so one of like the most powerful people in the music
and he was like,
yeah, we're going to go bowling.
like back then, it's like they have Amy Winehouse.
Oh, they had Amy Winehouse?
Yeah, he's the one who bringing Amy Winehouse to the U.S. or whatever, like signing in the U.S. And they have like Colby Calais, Three Doors Down, like Chameleon Air. They have some pretty big acts or whatever. And
so let me ask you this: why did you guys go with Republic then? Like, what was the main factor?
So that is a great story. So I told the story in class again today in my artist and record labels class. But so Monty flies out. And then we're like, we're gonna go over here, and then he's very smart at kind of figuring out who to talk to. He's like, he's like, okay, here's the MCs, but it's like, it seems like Andy is like the guy, the business guy. So he just like comes up, I'm playing pinball. And he and so I was like, yeah, man. He's like, hey, so we really love the record. Like that Handlebar is a special song. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I was like, so if we were on a major label, if we were gonna sign with you guys, like, I mean, would we have to like re-record everything, or like, would you have to A&R the record? And he's like, well, I mean, we could do that. He's like, but you could just, if you just want to put it out exactly as it is, we can just do that. I was like, really? Like, so we could just put out, because I was like, I think we made a pretty good record. And so I was like, we could just put it out that way? He's like, yeah, if you want to. I mean, sure, if you maybe you want to remix it or remaster it or something, but if this is how you want to put it, we'll put it out exactly like that. And I was like, really? And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, I had no idea. Like, I would probably, like most people's concept of a major label, like, oh, they're going to come in and they're going to change everything and they're going to control everything you do. And, and there wasn't any of that for Monty at all. It was just like, no, man, like, we can do this. We can put out this record.
And was he like the head of the label at that time? Head
CEO,
of A&R,
him and his brother. Him and his brother run it. So
Monty's like the A&R side, right?
No, he's like the CEO of the.
Oh, okay.
He's
all right.
President of the label.
All right.
Him and his brother are CEO, COO.
Okay.
So, but actually, funny enough, I was just reminded about this. So Ben Adelson was then an intern in his 20s, and I don't even know if he maybe turned us on to Monty, if he helped discover us a little bit and put us on their radar. But now he ended up that was his first thing. He went on that trip, so he remembers, like, we had lunch. He was in town for something, and we had lunch. And he was like, "Yeah, you remember that this stuff happened?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot that you were there." And he's like, "Yeah, man, it was crazy." And now he's like running Mercury Records, which is Post Malone, and like, I mean, he went to become executive vice president of A&R, and now he's running Mercury Records. He signed James Bay. He manages Young the Giant. He's like Noah Kahan. He signed Noah Kahan. Like, he's a very ride, like. Yeah. And now he's been in it for 20 years. But when he was 20 or 21, that was like his first thing that he went to do an A&R thing with Monty. And so then I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go to Denny's now. If you want to come to Denny's, I guess you can come with us or whatever. So here it goes. Like, here's Monty Littman coming to Denver, Colorado. Like, and it's like, all right, like at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, he's like coming to the Denny's, And he's like, all right. It was like, well, I was like, so what? He's like, hey, look, guys. He's like, we really believe in you guys. Like, why don't you just let us fly out? Or why don't you just fly out and have a meeting with us? And I'm like, well, we can't afford to fly out to New York. He's like, no, we would pay for everything. we'll fly you all out there. We'll put you up at a hotel. Like, just come see the office. Come talk with us. But at that point, you see how fast things move, because it wasn't like, it was like, yeah, like next week, And so like now I have to talk to the band, like, okay, is everybody like, can we go to New York next week? And we flew out there, and then, go to the offices. They have all our stuff up. They start talking with us, like taking us out to dinner and all that. And then, okay, now we kind of know. And then they give us the offer, and it's like a pretty good offer, better than some of the other offers we had gotten. And they, they do hits, so like we knew, like, okay, if they do this, they're going to put money into us. The deal was good. They had a lot of other money put aside for tour support and other things like that. And probably also beside us because JJ was just like young manager who was just like like they were like, oh, this kid's like gonna work his butt off, you know, so we can like lean on this manager to like get stuff done and kind of make sure the band's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And and then we did it, and we were like talking about it, and they were like, then the lawyers start going back and forth, and we had already booked like this small tour to like LA, because now we're starting to like do little weekend tours to like, you know, Salt Lake or, you know, New Mexico or California or Arizona, just like kind of like just trying to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were like did this show, and then like, and we had an agent, and she had booked like a couple shows for us. And we were driving in, and then we like are driving to LA, and then it's K-Rock, which is at that point is the biggest alternative station in the world. And they're like, all right, we got a new one from this band Flobots, and they play our song on K-Rock. And I was just like, oh my God. Like we're all like jumping and screaming in the van. We're like, oh my God, they're playing our song on another radio station, on the biggest radio station in the world. And then we hear it, and then afterwards it's like the DJ's like, well, yeah, so that was Handlebars by Flobots. It's like, I don't know what that was about. We'll see if that lasts.
Oh, what the hell?
like totally dissing us and like deflating us. But they have those things, and they have a caller poll where they're like, vote on the songs they want to hear. So the weekend happened, and then on Monday we were like the #1 requested song after they had played it just like a couple times.
Yeah.
And then we were like the #1 song, and then they just started playing it. And we signed our record deal like at the Troubadour. We had a show with like Foxy Shazam or whatever.
That's in LA, right?
Yeah, LA. So we had gone to LA, and we played this small thing, and then I remember signing the record deal in this tiny dressing room at the Troubadour. Then we did the deal. We came back. Now we have an agent. Now it's like, okay, full steam. All right, we're gonna put the album out May 20th everywhere. It's gonna be in all the stores. We're gonna book a tour, and then it just was. From the next 2 or 3 years, it was just like go. It was like touring constantly, trying to make a record, being a full-time artist.
Yeah, and you guys hit platinum not too long after the release.
Yeah,
right? A couple years after.
Yeah, it was
right?
like a year maybe. And
okay.
Like, so it was like, you know, platinum was like 1 million iTunes downloads or whatever. So yeah, now all of a sudden we have this platinum single. We're getting a lot of radio play. We're starting to build up our fan base, starting to tour, and learning a lot, making a lot of mistakes along the way. But you know, and then the label like, okay, now we have to make a second album, and we're gonna get this producer, and you know, all these, you know, we got Mario C, who produced all the Beastie Boys records, so he did like Check Your Head, Ill Communication, Paul's Boutique, Intergalactic.
You said he was an engineer?
He was the producer.
Oh, producer.
So he produced those records,
Okay.
But he's also an engineer. He's producer and an engineer.
I mean, especially for like a record like Check Your Head, like
Yeah.
that is.
I mean,
oh my God,
we loved
that's
the Beastie
props.
Boys.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, it's like I'll work with the legendary Mario C.
Course,
like,
yeah.
you know, Mario C. Like,
Exactly,
and the song is like, that's Mario C. that they talk about in the song. It's like gonna work with us, and you know, and then that was a process where we, you know, that was like definitely band. You know, like, okay, we did this thing. Like, oh, now we have to do it again. You know, it's like everybody says you have your whole life to make your first record and only 6 months to make your next one. And so, you know, and we put that one out, and you know, our fans liked it, but it didn't do as good because there wasn't like a hit song on it. There's some politics and stuff involved in that, but that's just how the music business goes. You know, like, hey, you might be hot 1 minute, you might not be hot the next minute, and so then we got let out of the record deal, and then like the band had some infighting, and then I parted ways with the band, and then they kept going on, you know, without me, and then I kind of focused on Bob Schism, on my other project. And then like 2014, I guess, 2013, 14. So I was like kind of like full time. The band was like going like, I mean, I was even before that, but I would say 2008 to 2011 or 12. Like I was like, we were just touring, playing shows, like doing it all the time. I mean, 1 year, I don't think I stayed in my bed for like more than like a month, like out of the entire year. You know?
That's what you were saying.
Yeah, it's like you're just like, and that shows you too when you're on a major label. It's like, it's not like, oh, okay, and everything says like, no, now you actually really have to work because now you're doing a radio show and you're doing interviews and you have to do this and blah, blah, and it's like now you're working all the time. So it's actually like, it's not easier, it's way harder because you actually have to do all this stuff. Yeah. And you know, parted ways, and then I had a friend who I also went to school here, was like working at the school and was like, hey, we need somebody to teach like the pop rock stuff, or, you know, and direct those. And I was like, I could maybe do that. And just like trying to find a side gig while I was like trying to get my other band going. Mm-hmm. And that other band, like, you know, we almost got very close to getting a record deal. It was like, oh, you know, like we we won this contest for this like Ford thing where it was like with Don Was, and it was like the guys from Pimp My Ride like made a studio out of a car or something like that, and like so like they flew you out and they did this TV show thing, and then
like you're in the back of a coupe.
Like you're using it to mix. You're not like in it, but they're like they're building it like in the back of the car or whatever, and then we play the showcase, and then they would pick you to like do the thing, and then you get kind of a record deal, and he produces the thing for you. And we got second place. We didn't get the thing, and then we did another contest with Hard Rock where the judges were like Steven Van Zandt from like Bruce Springsteen's band, and the guitar player in Bruce Springsteen's band, and like they had a Live Nation and all that stuff. And we got to the very, very finals of that, and then we got like second. Like if we would have won, they would have given us like. You would have signed a record deal. They would have given you a couple $100,000. You would have owned your master, and then we would have gotten to go to London and open for Bruce Springsteen.
What the hell?
Like, I was
owning masters, couple $100,000, and opening for Bruce Springsteen.
I was very like bummed that we did not win.
Yeah, no,
win that.
That is a crazy offer. That's like unheard of.
It was
for,
like
a
because like Battle of Bands things, like if you take advantage of it, there can be some real opportunities there.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of doing that, and then I was like teaching on the side, and trying to get this other band to go. So it was like almost got the deal, almost got the thing. And that's how the music business is sometimes. It's like, I was pretty lucky with Flobots, but I had also, I think I started playing in bands when I was 15, and I got my record deal when I was 26.
Yeah.
So it was like 10 years of like rejection and not getting the thing. And then kind of knowing it, okay, I'm maybe going to get this thing, and then it doesn't quite happen. And then I'm kind of teaching, and then I start doing some more music business classes, and then and I've been married this whole time, so like, want to start a family, or whatever. So then I kind of 2016, it's like I have my first kid, so that's kind of a big shift for me in being a dad, and kind of so now I'm like, okay, well maybe this teaching gig's kind of cool because like I can offer my experience to these students, and I still have a lot of connections with the industry, and I can bring in professionals. I mean, you've been in my classes where it's like I'll bring this A&R person from Republican.
I will say every time you bring in a guest speaker, like those are my favorite days in your class. Like it's very, I don't know, I feel like being in music business and studying just music in general, it's scary, it's a hard industry to get into, but every one of these people that you bring in say the same thing. Like I was right where you're at. Like clueless. I have no idea what I wanted to do, but I found my way, and that is just so. It's
inspiring. Like there's lots of ups and downs. And, and whether it's like
every time you bring someone in, just like put some gas in me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because they were where you were, and it's like whether it's whatever Green Day's manager or JJ from Spotify or Corey who's our old agent who books Imagine Dragons, and my thing is like I'm trying to bring in as many real world people, because like I know the business and I can teach you all as much as I can, but I'm not at a record label every day, and those things change. So it's like I bring in my person who's A&R at a big record label to be like, what's your day like?
Yeah.
Students ask questions.
It is very different, like learning about it from our professors versus hearing about it from people that are like
doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of good information that we learn, but I feel like a lot of our professors say like, okay, you're gonna learn the bulk of this when you're actually in your career.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean?
Like, we'll give you like it's good if you. I do think even when I went to school here, like I think the program has gotten much better since I think it was an okay program back then.
I did want to touch on that actually.
I think it's a much better. It wasn't bad. Like obviously Paul and like all my music on the music side of stuff, that's only been great and only gotten better. And we had some good. I did learn some. Like I did learn things that I applied early on in my career before that record deal that did help me a lot.
Oh, of course.
But now it's like the professors we have here are so great, and like all the technology and everything we have is just like so. And that we like Zoom didn't exist, so it's like also like. It's also now I can do that. Like now I can get the person in New York or LA who's very busy, but I can get them to Zoom for an hour.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's huge. That would have never happened before.
So you kind of, I just want to leave it off on one last thing here. Yeah. You kind of touched on how CU Denver's music business program has changed throughout the year. But what about the Denver music scene? I remember when we first started, you said it was a very small, very few local bands. But I've only lived here for about a year and a half, and I have a completely opposite perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Denver.
I mean, I would say, not taking too much credit or whatever, but I do think part of that was the Fray, and then it's like the Fray got a big deal, and then Re kind of got a deal, and then 303 got a deal, and then oh god, there was one other band. There's a couple other bands I'm not thinking about right now. Oh, and like technically, like the Lumineers, technically, because they like moved here like for a year.
Oh yeah, isn't the main singer from like Fort Collins or something?
No,
like that?
They were from New York.
Okay.
And I think they moved out here, and because they became friends with Nathaniel Rateliff and all those guys, and also Marcus Mumford was out here for like a year.
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
and that's why like Nathaniel and him are friends or whatever. Okay. Like, I think I don't know if he coached soccer or something. It's like there's like a lot of weird Denver things to like really big bands, and I know because I was in a band, so like I hear all these stories and stuff. But before the Fray, it was like Big Head Todd and the Monsters, I guess, and like and the Samples and Toad the Wet Sprocket. There weren't a lot of bands from Colorado that people knew.
Yeah.
So now you have that, and then you have this burgeoning jam scene going on. So you've got like String Cheese and like, like because the jam scene became really big out here.
What do you mean jam scene? Like jam band?
Yeah, like Grateful Dead, jam band.
Yeah.
Like that was like a big thing in Colorado.
Okay, yeah.
It's like Cervantes and all that stuff, which I would say now is like
they do just like a lot of hip hop shows.
Yeah.
Any hip hop artist that I see.
And now I would say that's like, so. And through all those things, so now it's like, oh, there was a band that actually became a big national band and had a big hit. Mm-hmm. And then I would say like Nathaniel Rateliff is like the next, he's continued to be pretty big.
Yeah.
And there's always like these little signings that people do and don't know about that are kind of happening out of people out of Colorado. But I mean, but I think now there's so much more structure and support for artists. Like radio stations gladly play local artists.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just like a almost endless amount of like just like CU Denver bands. I feel like I hear about like a new CU Denver band like every other day, and especially like being involved in the radio, there's just like so much out there.
Yeah.
Like,
and so like now there's like plenty of small clubs and like plenty of places to play all ages shows.
That's what I love about the city the most. Just the small venues, like the really intimate venues.
I mean, we have more venues per capita than any other city.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would say like I think kind of these little CU like the Fray and us, and like I do think oddly enough with the CU connection kind of like helped lay the groundwork for people to take bands from Denver seriously.
Yeah,
because they're like, oh, now they can actually sell records and they can do stuff. And then now you go like take that to like Pretty Lights or something from Fort Collins, and like and now you have the whole bass. Now it's like the electronic music scene, right? It's like we're like the bass capital of the world, right? Yeah. So I say especially for electronic music, if you're trying to break into it, like this is a great place to be. It's a place to be. Mm-hmm. Just because people love that kind of music here, and they like hip hop, and they like like people in Colorado just like live music.
They just like music.
They just like going to shows.
Yeah.
Which was great for us because that's also why we were able to get started, and we learned very quickly that like other cities aren't like Denver, because like you go to New York and there's like they don't care, like we had to learn quickly, like we have to be put on a good show wherever we are, because people in LA don't care, people in Chicago don't care. I mean, they care eventually, but like you have to win them over. It's not like when you're playing your hometown crowd, it's like they like you and it's like play that song.
Exactly,
and it's like you think you're great. It's a thing I call, or JJ actually coined this term as Denveritis, where you kind of like you sell at a venue in Denver, like you sell at the Bluebird or the Gothic or something, and then you think you're like, well, why am I not famous yet, or whatever, like, oh, it was a big deal, and that's kind of can kill some local bands. I think it's like there's a whole like, or you go to Europe, or you go to the UK, or you go to France, or like like there's a whole world, Australia, there's a whole world of shows to play out there, and so. I think, I think it's a great scene, and I think honestly the college is, there's a lot more support. Just between, like I went to your guys' launch party, and it was just cool. It's like a Tuesday night, and I took Maddie, who's another alumni, who's the day-to-day manager for Glass Animals. If you know, Heat Waves are like a very big band. Who's also, we got some people that have done things, it was just cool to see, like, I talk a lot about like, hey, go hang out, go support your friends' bands. like build a community here. And it was cool just to see actually all of you hanging out.
We were
like,
so happy.
And
to
like,
get that crowd.
like watching your friends' bands play and like supporting each other. And I was like, I don't know, there's probably like 100 people there or something. It was like, I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, because I was like,
really
didn't know if
happy
anyone was
about
going to show up. And I was like, hey, all right.
We didn't know if anyone was going to show up. But
Yeah.
we're very happy about it.
You know, so I think there's like, and there's the whole idea of like a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
I think if you do it right, now you can use social media to really get a lot of attention or whatever, and then build your market. And that's kind of like pretty important. But I think if you do it like Denver, I think still can be a really great place to launch a band.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think maybe still better than LA or New York in terms of that people are just receptive here. I think it's a little bit easier to start getting a fan base going. And then if you can get something going, then you can start taking it to these other places.
Yeah.
So I still think it's a great place to launch. You know, we got all the major sports teams. Every Taylor Swift came here. You know, like you know, we're like we are a major concert city.
We are, yeah.
And for live music and stuff, especially if you just want to be a tour manager or you want to learn production, or how to book shows, or you know, I think we're a great market for that. You know, we're not LA, we're not this, you know, songwriting capital or whatever.
It's
but
very unique though.
Yeah, but there is, you know, and like it might be easier to like get an appointment or talk to somebody, or you know, for me to be able to be like, oh, Kirsten, yeah, like email this person or whatever. It's a little easier to do that maybe here than in other markets. So that's what I would say.
So thank you so much for coming on. We just got one more question that we kind of ask all of our artists at the end. So what are your thoughts on like making it? Like, what does that look like to you? And do you think, I mean, I think you have a unique perspective on this. So I want to ask you kind of like a B part to this question. Do you think that is a helpful or harmful mindset to these small musicians?
No, I think, you know, I talk about that in my class. I think you have to decide what making it is for you. So, because some people, it might just be like wanting just to sell out the Bluebird and like put out an album every year with their friends and like have people listen to it on Spotify, and they're like, that's cool, and that's it. That's what they make it. For some people, it's like they want to be the biggest artist in the world and they want to play for millions of people and have millions of streams, and that might be what making it is to them. You know, I've had a little bit of all those. I'm older now, so it's like it's just I'm just an older. I have kid. You know, like once you have children and you know your parents will be like, oh yeah, but you know, it's like certain things change and like your certain priorities change. And it depends on like if you're able. Like I will say, the life of an artist, there are a lot more income streams, but it still is very stressful in terms of like when's the next check coming from. Like it's really hard to have and I know about this because I did have this for a long time, my livelihood tied to my art. It's like if we don't make a good record,
that's scary.
If we don't sell tickets, I don't pay my mortgage, right? And I think that's the most stressful part of like quote unquote making it, you know, as an artist. You know, did I get the sync license? You know, I got this one that paid my whole bills last year, but I didn't get the sync license this year, or I didn't get that tour thing, or people didn't like the record this year. I got to go make another record, and I got to go spend $50,000 on this producer or whatever it is. So I think so some people might say like making it is like financially, you know, making a living doing that. For me, it's like I like where I'm at because it's like I like the teaching job. You know, I get like really great benefits and you know, like a retirement and stuff that I probably wouldn't get if I was like just doing it on my own. And I get to meet young people like, you know, like you, and be like, it's good for me to be around young people, like, you know, because I remember what it was like to be you and be like, what am I going to do in my life? Like, what's happening? And hopefully try to be supportive in that. But you know, for me, I feel like I've made it because I did like I wanted to get a record deal. I wanted to tour the world. I wanted to have a platinum single. I did get to do all those things. Like, I think sometimes it's easy to forget some of your successes. You know, even if you only have one hit, it's like, you know what? I had one hit. There's people who didn't have one hit.
Oh yeah.
You know, and take that for granted, you know, because like I'll look at like, you know, it's like Ryan Tedder or somebody, you know, it's like $50 million, like sold his catalog for $50 million, and he's like every hit. He's run like every hit song for everybody, and he has the One Republic, I guess, would be the other big huge band from Colorado because they started in Colorado Springs.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
did not know that.
So they have.
You mentioned their guitarists.
They have a lot of Colorado connect, like the drummers from like. I would say One Republic is also in that category of bringing attention to Colorado, because Ryan Tedder bought a mansion here, built a studio, and for a while was really trying to like Adele, Beyonce, all that. They came to Denver and recorded in his studio, like to bring people out of LA to like Colorado, and he was like, he would invite me to like come over and check out the studio, and was super cool. But obviously like way more successful than me. Like it sold millions of records. Like, I mean, also like the first song he wrote was "Bleeding Love" for Leona Lewis or whatever. Like that, like that had like went diamond or something.
Oh, did it?
And he had 100% writing on it.
Oh
and that was his first thing.
Oh, so he's just making bags.
So it's like
yeah.
Now he's a very good songwriter and extremely talented. Like he deserves everything he's got. But so it's easy to be like, but also with that, there's a lot of pressure. Like, what's the next hit? What are you doing? So for me, it's like, I rejoined Flobots back in 2019. So now I'm back in the band and we're working on a new record, and we've done some touring and we're kind of like reestablishing a little bit. And I feel good about that because I want to make another record and put it out there, and also have experience to be like, okay, I was just on tour. Here's how that went, or here's how TikTok goes, or whatever, and be able to relay that to you all students. But I think just for me, I feel like I accomplished a lot of my goals. I think if you just have people who like genuinely like your music and you have fans and you can like affect somebody's life in a positive way, that's like, I think that's kind of like making it a little bit, is like having a song connect with somebody and having them like actually affect their lives. Because I got tons of messages from fans and people being like, oh, this song changed my life, or this song really got me through a hard time, or this album really helped me with this, and then when you actually go on tour and you meet all these people and they like tell you these stories and you're just like, oh my God, you're like, wow, I guess maybe this little band that we started maybe like means something to some people. And I think that's really, I think that to me, I feel like I've made it because I've had some effect on people's lives with music, the way like when I was listening to music and I felt crappy and this song made me feel better, we've maybe done that for somebody else. So I feel like that is like full circle. Like, okay, I've made it. But
that's beautiful.
It's just really whatever people are trying to do. I don't think they have to be. And now it's balanced. It's like I can do this and I still can tour and I can still play shows and I can be around my kids. There's also a disadvantage to being on the road all the time and not being able to see your family. Yeah. And now I can kind of do that because I'm older. So it's kind of nice. So yeah. Long-winded answer, but that's what I say.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you, Prof Rok. Make sure to listen to our radio and our other podcast episodes, and thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.